No, okay, even if you can go 10 years. Okay, I agree. Yeah. You don't have 5 years. Okay, even if you can go to Ghana, but next one. 2020.
Hello out there in FOL Radio Land and for those watching online. Glad to have you aboard. Today we're going to discuss some events that are taking place in Africa that is claiming the attention of many. With me to discuss this topic today is Edward Amara, who is there in the trenches of Africa. He will be giving us his update from his location. And we're going to delve right in. Edward.
Yeah.
How is it where you are?
Thank you very much. I am currently in Sierra Leone, West Africa, in some part of the East. And maybe following latest events that are actually happening in Africa, especially when it comes to our economic setup, political situation, and other major development. I think in a nutshell, Africa is thriving because although we are facing a lot of political crises, but I think those countries that are very peaceful or somehow peaceful on the continent are far much bigger than those ones that are actually undergoing conflict. But it is unfortunate and quite amazing that almost all regions in Africa are affected by maybe a armed movement. Like if we watch at the north is definitely not safe. You have countries like Libya, Tunisia, of course, they have their own armed movement. Even Algeria is not too much. You've got Tunisia is having a kind of maybe strong leader who does not believe in democracy. That is Kais Saied. He came into power in 2019. He was a political novice, a lawyer, a law profession. Unfortunately, he decided to manipulate the constitution, sack the parliament, cripple the executive, and appointed yes men into the executive. Then also make the judiciary to be people who only obey or listen to his tune. Because if you come into West Africa, we have seen places like Mali suffered successive coup d'etat since 2020, 2021. Then we have seen coup d'etat into Guinea, Conakry. Then we also saw another coup d'etat in Burkina Faso. Then the latest one being in Niger. If you get into southern part of Africa, of course, world like Zimbabwe just conducted her election and Emerson Mnangagwa was re-elected. Of course, we also saw Angola, which is in the southern part of Africa, and overthrown. Of course, this is a topic of discussion. It's definitely took place yesterday on Wednesday over there, which is definitely not pampering. If you get into the Horn of Africa, you see places like Ethiopia is at war with the Amhara region. Of course, they just fought war in Tigray. In Mekelle, that is the capital city of Tigray, seriously suffers or shot. You saw places like, and we are also seeing places like Uganda, which is actually in the Horn of Africa. Of course, Yoweri Museveni came into power since 1986, does not want to leave power. You also watch like Denis Ingwesu, who is in Congo, Brazzaville for quite a long time, has been in power. Of course, if you check into Central Africa, Chad is at war. Then even, of course, in Central Africa Republic, the capital city of Bongi, we are seeing people fighting over there, Anti-Balaka and Christian Balaka. Even Cameroon, that is very close to West Africa, but geographically it is placed in. So all of these things are there.
Yeah, Edward, but for us to make sense of it, we notice that the whole Africa is on fire. But let's see if we can make sense of it. Let's try to zero in on one region and see if we can find commonalities. So let's talk about the Sahel region. Lately, we've heard, just the other day, Gabon has had a coup d'etat. But before then, it was Niger. Then it was Mali. Then it was Burkina Faso, Guinea. All these regions are Sahel regions. Did you notice, were you able to detect anything common amongst these groups of nations that had this insurrection?
Yes, there is commonality among them. In the first place, they are related into culture, and these people suffer. They underwent the same underwent colonization by the same imperialist or colonial power, that is France. And where they are surrounded, they found themselves in the low desert area, that is the Sahel region, and the dominant people among those people, they are like maybe they are like the Fulani or the Fulani, the Hausas and Fulanis, because that is why if you check some of them, we tell you these are the Bambara, but most of them, the dominant people over there are Muslims, and most of them are Fulanis, and some of them belongs to the Bambara tribe. And what happened is that France, that is their superior, their overlord, the country that colonized them, have had maximum control over these countries. But maybe because of exposure and urbanization, and also the infiltration of other countries into the Sahel region, countries like Russia, countries like China, the Sahel is being a little bit brainwashed. Because maybe the evils that France committed in the Sahel before this time was never exposed compared to this particular area. But with the availability of France, with the availability of Russia and China, then they have seen how long they have been in relationship with places like China, like France. Nothing actually has been gained. And France has supported most of the regime into the Sahel region. And France's presence into the region has never helped to solve those problems. Coupled with their religious mentality, the common ideology that they use, the jihadist movement. And since the dominant culture, tradition, and religion over there is Muslim, it is very easy for you to buy public sympathy. And above all, you see places like Nigeria, they have a jihadist movement moving over there known as Boko Haram. And Boko Haram has a spilling impact on places like Niger. Niger is not safe because it shares border with Nigeria, and most of Boko Haram activities are actually being conducted into Niger. You see, Mali is also suffering from the Tuareg rebels attack. I see how other people are there. They come to Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso have suffered several terrorism attacks, and Mali has never been able to.
All by the same. Is that the same Tuareg group that is attacking them?
The Tuareg group in Mali. They are actually based in the northern part, Timbuktu region, Gao, and other places.
I
And these
heard there
people
was a
share
large
similar-
exodus there was a large exodus of Tuareg into neighboring countries.
What did you say? If there's any incident of Tuareg into neighboring countries?
Exodus, yes, they left Mali and went into neighboring countries.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's the same thing that is happening today in Nigeria. You have seen like Nigeria, the Boko Haram home is the northern part of Nigeria. But now because of their activity, they have affected places like Cameroon, places like Chad, places like Niger. So just because one country harbor a kind of insurgent group that is affiliated with religious mentality, it has affected these people all, and they share the same culture, they share the same tradition, and they are dominated by the Muslims. So, and they have seen France into this country. Of course, in each occasion where they suffer attack or they are going under insurgent suppression, France normally comes in. But when France comes in, they have not been able to successfully battle these trial rebels or jihadis or any type of Boko Haram or Aswad, that is the Islamic state of West Africa. And with the availability of Russia in those countries, Russia have now succeeded to brainwash them, maybe bastardize the mentality and the respectability that they have for France before this time. And most of the things that France have actually deprived them of, in one or two ways, they are getting it from Russia. They are getting it from France. And France now are proving like a kind of real friend. I mean, Russia is proving like a real friend, a real sympathizer, somebody who is willing to fight the cause, not only on exploitation. Because in watch, all the ideology about France is exploiting. And it exploits nations that are even bigger than ourselves. So with this, culture and their political indifferences, and similarly the type of havoc they are suffering, it is very easy for them to sympathize with the ideology of powers that are outside France. That is why each of these countries see they will demonstrate and ask France to leave.
Okay, let me push back a little bit. Okay, I agree with you. We are seeing more China and Russian involvement in Africa. But let's take a microscopic look at these countries that recently in Gabon, it was the elite presidential guard that overthrew Bongo. And notably, according to my sources, they were just recently trained by the US. Similarly, in Niger, again, very similar situation. It was the elite guard that carried it on, who also were recently trained by the US. Do you see a commonality in this? Is this invisible hand behind this, being that Russia and China are getting more involved in Africa?
Well, I am not seeing a kind of political divisiveness between France and US when it comes to their territories, because they have that common ideology and they almost sympathize with them when it comes to international, especially if you watch at the UN. We also have France, America, and Great Britain support. They are there. The opposing parties are Russia and China. Having underscored those things, I think most of those guys who are now being trained into the US and they are sent into different territories to continue managing the affairs of their government, they can easily be exposed to a Western ideology, and when they come back, they are willing to maybe emancipate themselves from the yokes or the burden of France. And having been exposed in a sophisticated society, when they come back, they have people who are their suitors. People are willing to entertain them with this ideology. So when they come, it is like training the right person for the right job, but you end up to sack you whom you have been trained for them to protect you. Because when you watch, like, just as you are saying, even when you watch like Mamadi Doumbouya, he had ample amount of training into the US, he's having Afghanistan and other places. But when he came back with his urbanized mentality, on arrival, he realized that France is actually a suppressor. So most of those military guys who are having sophisticated training in the Western world, when they come, they are not actually trained with the notion that go and overthrow your government, but they are trained to come and fortify them. But if they have gone there and maybe spent 5 or 6 years, they have seen how they are exposed, and their other countries are progressing compared to what they have, and they are seeing like you train somebody to fortify his nation, to be a patriotic citizen, to protect his country against in our external aggression. Then unfortunately, you are back and you are seeing a foreign power who have a kind of ideology operating into your country that is contrary towards what you have been taught. And if there's another sympathizer on ground who similarly have that kind of political power, and you also have the mojo, you have no option rather than to go. Like, just take an example. When Umar Bongo was sick in 2019, Ali Odimba Bongo, because Umar Bongo was the father, Ali Odimba Bongo was sick. He was actually admitted, and there was a coup attempt on this there was a coup attempt in 2019. Upon arrival, he arrested most of those people. It did not take long when Emmanuel Macron visited in 2020, and the opposition leader accused Emmanuel Macron of visiting. In fact, he visited there in 2022. They accused him of visiting Ali Odimba Bongo at the time elections were actually nearing. It is just like trying to go and fortify himself. And he went over there with another 400 gendarmeries from France. Algeria, I mean, for speaking out loud, Libreville or the capital city of Gabon is definitely not at war. Why are you there with your army? So they were asking these people should leave. So France, with her own ideology, they normally sympathize with governments that seek their own interest. But when they are given external training, when those guys come, they realize that France is an evil. So it's like maybe you train somebody for the right purpose, and when he comes here, he realizes that what you have taught him, you are not actually implementing it into your country.
So what you're saying here is these guys, they are externally trained. When they come back, they see France as the exploiting force in their countries. So then that's why is motivating them to rebel and launch these insurrections. Do you see this now as France losing its special position in the African sphere?
Absolutely, France is losing its special position. Look like, of course, Angola that is now a member of Commonwealth. Togo is also a member of Commonwealth. And Algeria has, Algeria on several occasions have demonstrated and even asked France to leave. Then you come into West Africa, Burkina Faso has asked France to leave. Guinea has asked France to leave. Then Mali has asked France to leave. Even Democratic Republic of Congo, that is currently led by Etienne Tshisekedi, has asked France to leave. So France has been seen as a hypocrite. You watch like places like Luanda. Luanda is having close affiliation with Great Britain. So it's like France is losing its great allies. And because of one, France is a kind of crafty country. Geographically, DRC Congo, that is the Democratic Republic of Congo, can even take the size of France 5 times. But it is very small, but it has been able to successfully manipulate its colonies. And so it's subject with its yet it has been successful, it has been able to successfully manipulate its colonies. Install certain policies that will only make France bigger, France stronger. Look at CFA. Why should it be operating in all of those countries? And the main saving of each and every French colony is in France. And they have supported regime into those countries that have successfully exploited their nations. That is why any country or which loses their political grip with France, it is like the likelihood for it to be overthrown is so high. But when those leaders realize, by the time they start to concretize their own ideology with France, they have sent others across other into nations like America. You are seeing now, we are now seeing maybe Russia having military bases into places like Burkina Faso, into places like Mali, and they are also having clandestine military bases into places like Guinea. And China also is there. Mind you, China also another third world country. So they are not teaching these countries how they managed to emancipate themselves from the Western mentality, how they have been able to become stronger, more powerful, and to even compete with this country militarily and economically. And in Africa, we have a virgin ground. We have our democracy is very useful. I mean, the population is very useful. We have almost everything that it takes to develop ourselves. But the main skill, the ideology, the human resources is lacking. So upon their return,
human resources or the capacity, human capacity, not because we do have a lot of people, especially young people. You're talking about the capacity to transform resources into wealth. I think that's what you're referring to.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because when they come, it's like you just take a common example. In Sierra Leone, where I was, sometimes ago, we took around a carat about, I think, was it a 1,000 carat of diamond under the former Annex Bicroman regime. We cannot even try to produce that particular diamond into any secondary product. So at the end of the day, we can easily be vulnerable. So even if they come, they tell you that they are going to give you 20 million United States dollar when the diamond is worth than that, you do not have option because you cannot turn it into secondary good for use. So it's like Russia and China, what they are doing is a bit differ from them, but they are not actually good friends. Honestly speaking, they are not good friends.
They are trying to encourage
production on the continent.
Production
on the continent. But in doing so, our leaders are also a little bit blind because they are signing contract with them that is benefiting more the Chinese and the French and the Russian. Then they are also using us like scapegoat. I think we need to have a crafty type of leadership here, because now that we have seen as an ideal market, an area that is available for marketing their ideology and also for innovation purposes, we should be very careful that at the end of the day, we should not be abused.
Okay,
but let me not be exploited.
I understand you, and I agree with you that everybody is coming for their interests and not ours, and we have to be very careful how we enter it. But also, we noticed that even if we were getting out of the Francophone countries now, we notice also that regimes that are being accused of fraudulent elections are partly to blame for these insurrections, because we're hearing things in Sierra Leone, we're hearing things in Nigeria, and is that not also attributing to the unrest and the insurrection that's going on now? The idea that we don't have fair and transparent elections.
Absolutely. Democracy is the will of the people. And when the government lacks legitimacy, you normally see the army will use it as an excuse to grab power. Of course, it's a common ideology that when the people are being forsaken by their own elected leaders, the army normally step in to rescue their last pride. And we have also seen that the judiciary actually is the last hope of the common man. But said judiciary has actually been manipulated. And most of the political crises that we are seeing is a kind of gross manipulation of elections results that have resulted to huge amount of overthrowing to Africa or recent development in the early 2020s. Look like Guinea. Of course, Alpha Conde was overthrown because he committed a constitutional coup, and the West and other nations remain silent. The referendum that is conducted in 2019 was fraudulently conducted. The opposition demonstrated, he grabbed most of them, imprisoned them, and even used letter forces against them. Nobody spoke anything. And when he conducted the general election, he won it, the opposition declared that he did not win the election. He hired different other people, like Mamadi Doumbouya was not in Guinea by then. He called him to train him as a special force, having known that he did not come into power legitimately because the elections result were fraudulently declared in his favor. At the end of the day, Mamadi Doumbouya used it as a yardstick to overthrow him. In Mali, parliamentary elections were conducted. IBK, that is Ibrahim Abibakar Keita, manipulated the election so that he can have enough representative into the House of Representatives or member of parliament recruited by his own political party. The people demonstrated against him, and when he realized that the elections that he forced the election commissioner to declare were not the will of the people, he decided that then let us reconduct the election. But by then, it was already out of hand. The army stepped in and took over power. In Burkina Faso, Kabore was elected. But Kabore did not have the political mojo. He doesn't have that political conviction. Neither did he have the backing of the army. So the army used that particular opportunity to seize power from him. You see, in Angola, the election result, we are clearly stating that Ali Odimba Bongo was losing. He manipulated everything. In fact, the opposition, the Gabonese Electoral Commission delay in releasing the result was a clear indication that the opposition has won. And when the opposition declared themselves winners, he came out now to declare that Ali Odimba Bongo won the election 67%, which was fraudulently wrong. And when they called for demonstration, the army used it as a yardstick. And what they did, in fact, but before the election, they rounded up some civil society members. And independent observers were not allowed to go into the country. Some opposition candidates who we are declared null and who candidates we are disqualified prior to the election, we are not even qualified to conduct the election as presidential candidate. Their names came on the ballot boxes. And with them preventing all other foreign observers to come into the country, it was a clear indication that they have known that Ali Odimba Bongo was a losing candidate. The army used it as an opportunity to seize power. You see, into Niger, of course, did not have incidents like that, but they were taken up by insurgent government, which they need to think that the president was not powerful enough, lacked that mojo, lacked that political ideology, lacked the connection, lacked the military support to successfully combat those military. They used it as an opportunity to take over power. They accuse him of corruption, they accuse him of embezzlement, and they accuse him of plugging the country into a total area of insecurity. And the only means that Niger can be safer is when they have a military regime. Look, the latest one into Zimbabwe. Of course, Emerson Mnangagwa, popularly known as the crocodile, has definitely been elected. But it is a very different scenario because the ZANU-PF regime into Zimbabwe handle opposition with later action. So since they are so powerful, they handle them with that hard-handed, and nobody is going to confront them. But we are also seeing the society now that is actually coming, evolving. You who do not even know what ZANU-PF has done in the past. It is just like South Africa. We're now seeing people demonstrating against the ANC. We're now seeing like the Economic Freedom Party led by the popular Julius Malema galvanizing youth who do not even have the knowledge of what the ANC did to ensure that South Africa survived the apartheid regime, because they are not seeing the ANC as a politically corrupt elite organization that they do not want to sympathize with. So most of those leaders who are currently leading Africa, they were from the days of independence, but we are now being exposed to youth who are no longer connected to that that archaic mentality. Leadership need to change. We need to have different type of ideology. People need to be encouraged into the society. So as I was saying, a kind of deliberate deprivation of the citizen rights and a kind of well-orchestrated plan by these so-called leaders to violate the rule of law is leading to a series of overthrow into Africa.
So you're saying that this chain of events is really it's the changing of the old guard, the old colonial implants, the people who are just stooges for these colonial powers are now being replaced and rejected, and a new breed of Africans are coming up to represent their countries. Is that what you're alluding to?
Absolutely. There is now change of event into Africa. Our exposure, mind you, most of the things that are happening today into the West, prior to this time, we never knew them. because we are not exposed to Facebooking, we are not exposed to WhatsApping, Twitter, Instagram, all of this social media, even television. But now we are now seeing life system is a bit stable into Africa, and Africa is now being exposed to the Western world. So it's like most of those things, there's not change of event, connection with the Western world. I think we are being socialized. There are times when socialization takes place, it positively and negatively affects the society. Before this time, in fact, there was media blackout. Now, if you come into Africa, you are seeing a lot of frequency moderators, FMs. You are now seeing certain countries where they have different type of local television stations, and now we are now exposed to seeing what is happening into the West. Just look like Sri Lanka, when Gotabaya Rakaposa in 2021, we have series of demonstrations. People demonstrated until they went into the capital and overthrew the president and asked them how to leave. So those change of event, our exposure, and the type of leadership and millennium that we are now in, there's different grip of ideology on the African continent. Young people are being socialized. Their mentality have been are gradually becoming urbanized, and with that, we are now trying to graduate from that archaic or that absolute way of thinking. We are now coming to, although we may not be living into the third world, but mind you, we have the knowledge of how the third world is living. Our society is not the third world society; it's a backward society. We are living in it's not the first world society. We are living in the third world society. But fortunately for us, we are having the mentality of the first world.
While I have you. Okay.
What I'm saying here, we are not living in the first world as you guys are living, but we are now having the knowledge and the ideology of what is happening into the first world. So we are now trying to nationalize those things into our own society, and it is what that is affecting the current leadership. Because somebody may say, do you think that here is America? Do you think that here is France? Do you think that here is over there? But I think our close association and seeing what is happening into this world is now helping the society to change. Gone are those days when leaders grossly violate our constitution and sit down there. Now, if you violate the constitution, they will stand against your person. So it's like there should be a change into our leadership style. There should be a change into everything that happens on the continent.
But let me ask you. The leaders being changed, that doesn't guarantee that law and order will be restored. We have seen leaders change even through military intervention, and sometimes it is worse than before. There are no guarantees by these changes. So even though we're looking for changes, how can we make sure these changes go in the right direction? Because people are corrupted by money and power and greed. So there's no guarantees. So where do you see the youth going with all of this, the new generations?
Well, we are really advocating for change, because it is only the gods and the fools that do not change. We are advocating for change, but the type of change that we are advocating for is not that is unveiling itself into Africa. We do not want a military to unseat a democratically elected government. We want government to be kicked out of power through the ballot boxes. But unfortunately, there is no ground laid for a leader to democratically be kicked out of power. They can do anything to manipulate. Like in Gabon, there was already a foundation being laid for Ali Odimba Bongo to leave power without the military intervention. Had the Gabonese Electoral Commissioner been truthful, patriotic, and loyal to himself to come and declare the results as they were being tabled or counted, unfortunately, he decided to change. And it is actually factual that the worst civilian regime is the best military regime. We want change, we need change, but people like me, it's not, or people like me are definitely not advocating for a change through the barrel. We want change through the ballot box, but we don't know how possible with that change unveil itself. You see,
So,
like in Burkina, in Senegal, you're having Macky Sall, whose term of office has expired. He met a constitution 7 years per term. He completed his first term and he got elected for the second term. Upon the conclusion of the second term, what he did, he conducted a referendum to nullify the 7 years term of presidential mandate per term, to turn it into 5 years time. So as long as he has now conducted a referendum, and the referendum has given his government the mandate to reduce the presidential term to 5 years, his intention now is to run for another 5 years, another 5 years, 2 times, another 2 times, because the first constitution that came with him into power was the 7 years time. Now that the constitution has changed under his regime, being that he had wanted to manipulate and run for third and fourth time, but it could be like a first and second time under a new constitution. So have you seen those things? So you easily propel people to go into against you.
Right. But my sources are telling me that is another place that soon may fall because of this, for the very same reasons you're giving, that by manipulating
absolutely.
the
When
Constitution, like they did in Ivory.
There's high tendency for Dakar to fall. High tendency for Dakar to fall, except if Macky Sall decides to withdraw. Now he's suppressing Ousmane Sonko, who is one of the mayor, and he was a former taxi driver into Senegal, very popular and so notorious among the youth for his vocality and maybe his robust attitude to challenge the government. He's suppressing him. And should Macky Sall decide to contest the election, trust me, what has happened into Mali will definitely happen into Senegal. And even in places like Ivory Coast, Ouattara is afraid.
Yes, Ouattara is afraid, and but France has a big stake in La Côte d'Ivoire also. But let's go locally where you are in Sierra Leone. There was a claim of an attempted coup there, and said it was the ringleader was a former police director. What have you heard since they extradited him back to Sierra Leone? Have you heard anything about the trial and anybody else?
That is Yeti. He was accused for having maybe committed some crimes. Also, he had subversive mentality, maybe to upset the government. These are some of the allegations. And I think Sierra Leone did her own part. It was not like in the cases of Henry Costa. Sierra Leone did her own part. They approached the Liberian government formally. And it was not done automatically like the case of Henry Costa. Henry Costa just arrived today. Liberia came and they said they should hand over Henry Costa to him. No. And Henry Costa was just a civil society activist, well known across Africa and well known into Liberia. He wasn't a police force. He wasn't an opposition leader. He was just a civil society activist. And by the time he crossed into Sierra Leone, that was time Liberia came demanding. And those things were not formal. When Yeti Sierra Leone made a formal application, went to the Liberia immigration, the Interpol security, they discussed him. He was an issue of discussant. I think they had an appropriate agreement, and Sierra Leone signed the papers that were due, and Liberia also signed the paper, and Yeti was extradited to Sierra Leone with the notion that he would be protected. But the case is being sent into court. Nobody knows what is going on, but the case is being sent into court.
Let me push back a little bit. My sources also tell me that it was also a prisoner swap, that a relative of the executive in Liberia was released in exchange for this guy in Sierra Leone. Can you confirm?
Well, if you ask me, it's a rumor. I cannot categorically deny it, but I never heard about it. Maybe you are the first one telling me. Maybe it's a carefully constructed, maybe false statement. I don't want to term it as a lie, but I haven't heard about that. All we know, because when he was extradited, the issue was all over in Sierra Leone, and nobody said about anything. But you know, oppositions, and you know what happened into African countries. Most of those statements can be classically untrue, but they may tend to paint it into such a way. The identity here was Yeti, and he was being extradited. And we don't know any person who is from Liberia that is actually under police custody for any kind of crime against the state of Sierra Leone. If you ask me, maybe to me it's a classically false statement. Maybe it could be spectacularly wrong to allege such thing. But sometimes, for one news and the other, the serum will always have element of truth. Maybe I will deep down, but where I'm seated, I can categorically tell you that no.
Okay, so we're coming to a close here pretty soon, and everybody is questioning what will France do? What will France do? Because there's so much it depends on Africa for. Do you see any further intervention of France in these countries that have recently had this insurrection?
No, France will not intervene. France already tainted its image. In fact, it was the same opportunity that the Gabonese soldiers used to overthrow Ali Odima Bongo. Having known that Gabon has already fallen out with France, and France only have 400 troops into Gabon, taking at the society, Russia and China are making certain strides on the continent, and France may not be willing to come to the rescue of Ali Odima Bongo because they do not have the same commonality or ideology. They decided to sweep and take over power swiftly. So in those countries, France will definitely not come to make any military intervention because she has already been accused of being the main source of the political crisis into those countries. So she's no longer willing to taint her hand. In fact, she's even approaching, that is why in Burkina Faso, Traoré said, France, America, China, Great Britain are all friends. But they only maintain friendship based on the interests of the country. Any country or world power that intends to befriend those nations with the intention to develop those countries, you are going to be allowed and permitted to operate. But those who have ulterior motive other than what has been placed for the nation are definitely not going to be allowed. And of late, we have seen Russia presence into those countries. So France may want to go into confrontation with an African nation. But you know the West, they use us. They misuse us, and at the end of the day, they reject us. Those Western countries will never be willing to take upon themselves to have any confrontation. If France were to intervene into those West African countries on behalf of the military, then America, Great Britain, Germany, and others have definitely intervened on behalf of Ukraine to fight against Russia. They wouldn't. They can just create a situation that total pandemonium is going to be into those countries, and they will use this as a source of exploitation. And France, why do you think the Niger issue is becoming so spectacular into the faces of others? It is because of the uranium. Neither France nor America do not want for Russia to lay on those uraniums. They are used for weapons of mass destruction or other things. And with the presence of Russia there, it is going to make Russia be powerful. But Russia also is undertaking another expensive expenditure or venture like fighting war in Ukraine. So she's a bit hampered. If Russia, we are not facing certain difficulties, by this time, maybe the African society would have been a big change. But Russia is undertaking huge amount of losses into the Ukraine. That is why I'm seeing Russia's presence on the continent. It's not to benefit us. It's to exploit us and regovern its resources that it is trying to do today. The one that it is using on Ukraine. Each arm, bullet, destroy over there will never come back. They need to regovernize, re-resource themselves, and do other things. So her presence on this continent is definitely not favorable. Russia knows that she's losing a lot, but how can she regain those resources? There are no other areas into the West for her to colonize, but they have the ID grant to come into Africa. They are willing. And most of those countries where they are coming to, these are countries that are suffering from military insurgency. And they offer them arms and ammunition, training of the national army. At the end of the day, you have those wagging and of course, Prigozhin has been killed according to the latest development. Who knows, it could only be a political propaganda. But based on the latest information, sources are saying that it's actually dead. But Russia's presence on the continent is out of exploitation. China is to sell her cheap product and exploit us to go. They are signing huge contract to us. That is why I'm saying our leaders need to be very careful on the type of contract they are signing.
Right. Well, thank you for coming to us with all that information. Folks, we're discussing the African Spring. We notice a host of African countries are having coup d'etats, West African specifically. And we have Edward Amar, who's on the ground somewhere in West Africa, bringing us his up-to-date information on it. And last, before we go, Edward, where you are, is it safe for you? Do you find it peaceful and safe? You don't hear rumors of uprising, do you?
Yeah, Sierra Leone is safe, absolutely safe. I believe maybe like the 10-year civil war have taught us that war is the last resort to solve any problem. And I think based on surroundings and our history, and based on what the ICC did, it's helping us a lot. The International Criminal Court of Justice. It imprisoned people who committed the greatest crime into Sierra Leone, like of Charles Taylor, Jibiru Masakwe, Isa Sise, Ali Konoa, the late Hinganoma, even Sanko, who lost his life. So all of those things taught us not to resort to any total state of pandemonium. And even those who have made series of attempts to throw the country into chaos have been arrested and they are facing prosecution. But in those precedents that we are set after the 10-year civil war will definitely prevent Sierra Leone to go into another chaotic situation. If the ICC did not exist, if the recommendation of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission we are not adhered to the letter, those who bore the greatest responsibility, we are punished. And we have all seen what happened. Maybe somebody would have said, I can do anything and go scot-free. But because of those past precedents, people have seen, people have realized, and they know the gravity of engineering people to take to the street and do whatsoever thing. I think we are a bit safe because of those precedents. Everybody knows and everybody have heard and everybody have seen what went on into the civil war and how many people suffer, how many people are still suffering because of the civil war, and how those who bore the greatest responsibility, we are treated by the Criminal Court of Justice.
Okay, thank you again. We will be calling on you again as things develop. Folks, this has been a special report on the African Spring. We are talking with Amara, located on the ground, and we will be bringing you some up-to-date information once we get it. In the meantime, We ask you to stand by for our closing. We are all Liberians.
We all are